There's a specific kind of dread every researcher knows. It's that cold, sinking feeling when you realize you've made a stupid, catastrophic mistake. For me, it came late one night in a BSL-4 facility. I was suited up, working with tuberculosis cultures, trying to find new antibiotics. I was also exhausted, juggling this with helping out at my mom's dental clinic and checking on biotech stocks. In the rush to leave, I forgot one crucial step. I left the UV sterilizing light on over my samples all night. The next morning, I walked in expecting to see weeks of work completely wiped out. But under the microscope, something was wrong in a good way. The bacteria hadn't died. Instead, my mistake had stressed them into producing a compound we hadn't seen before. And it wasn't an antibiotic. It was something called phenazine 1-carboxylic acid, a molecule that other research has shown is incredibly effective at selectively killing cancer cells. And the irony just floored me. Every summer, I spend my days in my father's oncology clinic, watching him manage chemotherapy for patients, seeing the brutal reality of that fight up close. And here I was, in a different building, having accidentally stumbled upon a potential new weapon for that very same war. It was my first real lesson in what we get wrong when we talk about healthcare. We imagine it as a clean, linear process, but it's not. It's a chaotic, deeply personal, and often miraculous system where sometimes the biggest breakthroughs, well, they come from the biggest mistakes. That accidental discovery and the realization it sparked is actually what got us thinking about this deep dive today. We're going to explore how we talk about healthcare, the surprising role of unexpected discoveries in driving innovation, and why we absolutely need a multidisciplinary lens to truly understand medical breakthroughs.
That's a really powerful start because you've hit on something, well, fundamental, this disconnect in how we see healthcare. We're just constantly surrounded by this broken system narrative, aren't we?
Oh yeah, it's everywhere. The go-to phrase.
It is. It's the shorthand for frustration, for inefficiency. But, it completely overshadows the incredible skill, the compassion, the sheer human resilience within that exact same system.
Right.
It makes us kind of blind to the quiet miracles happening every single day. Limbs reattached, cancers caught early, babies revived, minds put back together.
Things we almost take for granted now.
Exactly. They aren't just one-offs. They are the miraculous ordinary. And they often get missed because, well, the loudest voices, the headlines, often focus on dysfunction. Sometimes they even capitalize on it rather than celebrating the solutions. I remember getting caught up in that broken system way of thinking myself. You read the news, you nod along, wait times, costs spiraling.
It feels very real.
It did, especially navigating the maze of appointments for my own father's failing eyesight.
Yeah.
Every form felt like a hurdle, every call a test of patience. The whole system felt cold, impersonal, almost like it was working against you.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Then came the day of his cataract surgery. It took less than 15 minutes.
Wow, 15 minutes?
Yeah. And I watched the nurse gently help him up, and when he turned to me, his eyes clear, bright for the first time in maybe a decade, they were just filled with pure wonder. He looked past me out the window and he whispered, "I forgot the leaves had edges."
Oh, wow.
And in that moment, honestly, the whole broken system narrative just dissolved. It vanished, replaced by the reality of this quiet, everyday miracle.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Skilled hands, giving him back his world.
Exactly. It wasn't a headline, but it was absolutely everything.
I forgot the leaves had edges. That image, it really stays with you. It makes you wonder then, how do these big dominant public narratives even get formed? Why do some stories stick and become the story while others just fade away? It feels like less about the objective truth sometimes and more about like a constant battle between different interests.
That's a great way to put it, a push and pull. And they need continuous validation, right, to keep their hold.
Yeah.
And these narratives, they aren't fixed. They're always being challenged, they evolve, and often they resist new information, which is fascinating in itself. In American society, there are several really pervasive ones that shape how we see public health. One huge one is the focus on treating consequences instead of digging down to the root causes.
Okay.
The basic issue is we often default to just managing the symptoms, putting a Band-Aid on something rather than figuring out how to stop the bleeding in the first place.
So like your example, instead of cleaning up a toxic spill, we just tell people to buy water filters.
Precisely. That's the pattern. Another big one is this narrative of individualism and health promotion.
Ah, yeah. The pull yourself up by your bootstraps idea applied to health.
Kind of. And it's tricky because it tends to blame individuals for problems that are actually systemic. Think about the 2008 financial crisis. How often did the story focus on individual borrowers making bad choices?
All the time. Less focus on the lending practices that enabled it.
Exactly. Or in public health, we might tell someone, you need to eat healthier when they live miles from a grocery store with fresh produce. It lets the real architects of poor health, the systemic issues, completely off the hook by putting it all on the individual.
That's such a classic deflection tactic. Shifting the blame. What else do we see?
Well, there's also the narrative that frames racism mainly as, overt discrimination, like individual acts of prejudice or bias. And the problem there is it often hides the deeper structural racism that's baked into institutions. It avoids talking about real power imbalances and material oppression. Sometimes this leads to a really distorted view of, say, the Black experience by focusing only on individual prejudice, not the systemic barriers that exist.
Got it. So it simplifies a very complex issue.
It can, yeah. Then you've got the narrative that equates prosperity purely with free, self-regulating markets.
Like the market knows best.
And this can subtly mask corporate responsibility, undermine public health values. Think about drug prices largely dictated by the market, not necessarily public need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or how cost-benefit analyses are sometimes used to justify policies in ways that might weaken the moral argument for social goods, like, say, investing heavily in children's well-being. It's the idea that if it's for sale, the price is just what the market will bear.
So even how a supermarket aisle is laid out could reinforce that market narrative, which then impacts our perception of health choices.
Absolutely. And closely tied to that is the common narrative painting government as inherently inefficient, maybe corrupt, maybe authoritarian.
Yeah, government is the problem.
Right. And that narrative really works to weaken democracy, political equality. If government is seen as the enemy, it kind of removes politics from the market equation, making it much harder to hold corporations accountable or put policies in place that truly benefit public health. These narratives can be incredibly powerful in just defining what the problem even is.
So they shape the questions we ask or don't ask.
Exactly. Take the Pima Indians. The NIH spent, over $80 million studying their genetics, trying to figure out their high diabetes rates, working entirely within that dominant biomedical story. They found nothing, basically nothing definitive from the genes alone. Why? Because that narrow focus ignored the huge social and political context, the fact that their agricultural economy was destroyed when river water got diverted.
Wow. So the biomedical model completely missed the actual root cause.
Completely. Because the narrative didn't allow for that kind of explanation.
That sounds a lot like this idea of bureaucratic discourse in public health circles, where the language used kind of minimizes history, minimizes political conflict.
Yes.
And leads to these really narrow, sometimes pretty ineffective responses to social injustice instead of tackling the big, messy underlying issues.
It really does align with that. And even the social determinants of health, the SDOH narrative, which is a big step forward from just blaming behavior, it can still sometimes lack that direct link to social injustice and power dynamics.
Okay, so how do we bridge that gap?
Well, social epidemiologist Nancy Krieger offers two really helpful frameworks. One sees health inequalities coming from government policies, social hierarchies, where social determinants are like causes of causes, things that indirectly shape health.
Right.
But her more critical framework views societal determinants as political economic systems, where health inequities are the result of the purposeful use of power and privilege by some groups against others.
Okay, that's different. That's active.
It's active. In this view, wealth and better health for some are often gained at the expense of those forced into adverse living and working conditions, so determinants become causes of causes of causes. It shifts the lens from just inequality to potentially active injustice.
That completely reframes it from just systemic issues to intentional power dynamics. And that idea of finding something amazing in an unexpected place, like your story or like my lab mistake, it really highlights our next big point.
Yeah.
Just how crucial pure, simple serendipity is in medicine.
Absolutely. Your experience with phenazine 1 carboxylic acid is a perfect example. Serendipity has been vital, particularly in drug discovery. Finding something extraordinary when you are actually looking for something else entirely, it's happened with many major anti-cancer drugs too.
And it's not always this grand planned scientific effort, is it? Sometimes it's just, a contaminated petri dish or like a weird feeling.
Precisely. Let's go back to that accidental petri dish idea, because it pops up again and again. Take Dr. Eristhorne. Picture him staring at a dish, probably feeling defeated, right? Months of work targeted therapies doing nothing to these aggressive prostate cancer cells.
Been there.
Yeah, and this latest batch is contaminated. There's this fuzzy microorganism growing near the edge. Useless, he thinks. Garbage.
Toss it out.
He reaches for the biohazard bin. But wait, he pauses. Under the microscope, he sees this weird halo around the microbe. A perfect circle where the cancer cells just stopped growing.
Glow.
His heart probably starts pounding. It's illogical, a total accident. But he follows it. He isolates the compound from the microbe Pseudomonas aeruginosa, a common soil bacterium. The compound, phenicine 1 carboxylic acid.
The same one.
The same one. Known for antibiotic properties, but not really on the radar for oncology. Yet there was the proof in this forgotten dish. A chance contamination revealed this potent weapon. It wasn't the elegant design solution he'd been hunting for. It was messy, unexpected, pure serendipity.
Wilderness stumbled upon by accident.
That's exactly it. He learned that sometimes the biggest finds aren't on the map you drew, but out in the wilderness you didn't even know you were exploring.
That's an amazing story. It really makes you rethink the whole process of discovery. Are there other really famous examples like that, where luck played a huge role?
Oh, tons. I mean, the classic is Alexander Fleming and penicillin, right? 1928. Goes on vacation, comes back, finds a Petri dish contaminated with mold, and around the mold, the Staphylococcus bacteria are dead.
The famous moldy bread story, essentially.
Kind of, yeah. That observation, maybe just annoyance at a messy lab bench initially, led to the world's first antibiotic, saved millions of lives. Then you've got Albert Hofmann and LSD.
Okay.
He's synthesizing LSD-25 in 1943, accidentally absorbs some, and gets hit with this peculiar restlessness, vivid images. That leads him to suspect the compound, and then he deliberately experiments on himself, the famous bicycle ride.
Right.
Now, Hofmann always argued it wasn't pure luck. It was a planned investigation triggered by a chance observation. But still, serendipity opened the door.
Okay, interesting distinction.
Then there's meprobamate, the first big anti-anxiety drug, discovered from a site observation during research totally unrelated, looking for antibacterial agents. And chlordiazepoxide, another major tranquilizer, a benzodiazepine, literally found during a lab cleanup. The discoverer himself called it sheer luck.
Just cleaning up the lab.
Just cleaning up. What's really wild is when you look at the big picture, a huge chunk of what we call known drug space, the universe of medicines we have, was populated more by chance and serendipity than by deliberate, rational design from the start.
That's incredible. It really underscores how important it is to be open to the unexpected.
Absolutely. Pay attention to the anomalies.
So maybe next time my lab's a mess, I should just call it a serendipity incubator.
Yeah. But this puts a totally different spin on drug discovery. And speaking of new spins, remember we talked about antibiotics?
Mm-hmm.
From my own work with them and from some reading, there's this fascinating idea that maybe they aren't really weapons like we think.
Okay. The idea is they might actually be quorum-sensing molecules. Basically, the chemical language bacteria use to talk to each other, negotiate territory, resources, that kind of thing.
Like chemical tweets or messages between bacteria.
Exactly. Not weapons for all-out war, but more like diplomatic signals.
Yeah.
And if that's true, then antibiotic resistance. Maybe it isn't bacteria fighting against us. Maybe it's more like they're just learning to ignore our clumsy attempts to shout over their conversations with our crude antibiotic signals.
So we're just noise they're tuning out.
Kind of. And the solution wouldn't be stronger, louder antibiotics necessarily, but maybe learning to speak their language. Understanding quorum sensing could let us, I don't know, persuade pathogenic bacteria to just calm down instead of trying to wipe them out.
Wow. Shifting from warfare to diplomacy at the microbial level.
Yeah, it's a huge reframing. From eradication to communication.
That's absolutely transformative, a total paradigm shift. And that idea leads us perfectly into our final focus area, how bringing together different perspectives, this integrated multidisciplinary approach, is what really drives innovation in healthcare.
Okay, so let's dig into that. What does a really strong life sciences innovation ecosystem actually look like? What are the essential pieces that need to work together?
Well, yeah, it's definitely more than just having smart people in labs. It's about the synergy between key players. Research universities, academic hospitals, biotech firms, big and small, and crucially, venture capital.
So how they interact is key.
Exactly. The magic happens when they don't just exist near each other, but actively interlock. Stanford's often cited as a great example. They have academic medicine and research facilities under one administrative roof. That allows for much smoother collaboration, moving ideas from the lab bench to the patient's bedside much faster.
Makes sense. Reduces friction.
Right. And MD PhD students play a really interesting role here too. They bridge that gap because they understand both the deep molecular science and the realities of human biology and disease. They can help catch potential problems early in drug development.
So they have feet in both worlds, basically. And I guess the local culture must matter a lot, too.
Oh, hugely. The Bay Area, for instance, has this deeply ingrained entrepreneurial culture, questioning authority, trying to commercialize ideas. It's just normalized there. That's historically been different from, say, some more hierarchical East Coast universities where maybe academics were traditionally a bit more hesitant to jump into industry partnerships.
Interesting cultural difference.
And we shouldn't forget the government's role. It's crucial, even if sometimes it's less visible. Look at Kendall Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts. That whole area becoming a biotech hub wasn't an accident. It involved strategic government initiatives and investment that helped spark that academic and industrial renaissance.
Right, so it's this complex interplay of science, culture, funding, and policy. But even with these successful ecosystems, we know there are big challenges right now. Where are things getting gummed up?
Yeah, definitely facing headwinds. One major issue is fragmentation. You see tech developers focusing really narrowly on just their piece of the puzzle, maybe ignoring how it fits into the bigger picture.
Silo thinking.
Exactly. Lessons learned in academia don't always make it out effectively. And crucially, the perspectives of doctors, nurses, the people actually using the tech or delivering the care, their insights are often overlooked. There aren't always strong incentives for everyone to collaborate deeply.
And that fragmentation must slow down truly integrated solutions for patients.
It absolutely does. Beyond that, there's significant policy and funding turbulence. We've seen deep cuts proposed or enacted for agencies like the NIH, the FDA, the NSF. That hits basic research and early-stage clinical science hard.
And the ripple effects.
Pretty serious. We're actually seeing a brain drain, top scientific talent leaving the U.S. for places like Europe or China, where funding might seem more stable, and they're actively recruiting our researchers.
That's worrying. And then things like trade policy can complicate things further.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Tariffs, trade disputes, they raise costs and disrupt delicate supply chains. This hits generic drugs particularly hard because they often have thin profit margins. That affects affordability and access for patients.
Right.
And while the idea might be to encourage domestic manufacturing, reshoring, say, pharmaceutical production is incredibly expensive and takes a long time, you can't just flip a switch and have those factories appear overnight. It causes delays and cost increases in the meantime.
Okay, so it sounds like a pretty challenging environment.
Yeah.
But is there resilience? Are new opportunities still breaking through?
Oh, absolutely. There's tremendous resilience. One really exciting trend is how private capital is stepping up to fill some funding gaps left by public sources. Venture capital, angel investors, family offices, even foundations are increasingly funding early-stage innovation.
And maybe reaching different kinds of innovators.
Yes. And importantly, they're often looking beyond the traditional hubs like Boston or the Bay Area. They're finding and backing high-potential founders in other regions, which is great for broadening the ecosystem.
That's good news. What about the tech itself? Beyond AI, which gets so much attention.
Right. AI is huge, no doubt transforming things like preclinical modeling, finding patients for clinical trials, helping with regulatory filings. But there's still massive momentum in areas like cell and gene therapy. We're seeing real cures emerge.
Incredible potential there.
And looking further out, 3D bioprinting? The idea of creating custom organs using a patient's own cells, potentially eliminating transplant rejection and waiting lists entirely. This stuff is moving from sci-fi territory towards clinical reality much faster than people might think.
It really feels like it all connects back, doesn't it? Thinking about my own path, seeing patient care firsthand in my parents' clinics, then the deep science in the BSL-4 lab, tracking the financial side with biotech stocks, even tinkering with glowing organisms in synthetic biology experiments.
Right.
All these seemingly separate threads, clinical practice, research, finance, bioengineering, they all weave together to form this complex picture of healthcare innovation. It really is multidisciplinary.
It absolutely is. And what's fascinating is seeing how that more holistic understanding is even changing the physical spaces where healing happens.
Right, so.
Hospitals and clinics are moving away from just being sterile, functional boxes. There's much more focus now on designs that incorporate natural light, gardens, art, music. Think about Maggie's Centers for Cancer Care in the UK and elsewhere. They're intentionally designed as beautiful, calming spaces, recognizing that beauty itself can be therapeutic. The environment matters.
That makes so much sense. Healing isn't just procedures and pills.
Exactly. And if you zoom out even further, you see this trend towards the systematization of compassion in healthcare. Decades ago, palliative care was a niche idea. Now it's standard, ensuring millions can die with more dignity.
Right.
Cancer care used to be much colder, more clinical. Now you have this whole support system, specialized oncology nurses, patient navigators, helping people through the bureaucracy, support groups. It sounds a bit clinical itself, maybe, but we're essentially creating job categories for compassion, billing codes for kindness, quality metrics for dignity.
Scaling kindness.
Yeah, we're scaling kindness across a massive system.
And that, for me, really captures that miraculous ordinary idea we started with. The very fact that we can sit here and criticize healthcare, complain about wait times, cost, inefficiencies, it's actually paradoxically proof of how incredibly far we've come.
That's a great point.
Our ancestors couldn't complain about hospital wait times or the high cost of gene therapy because those things simply didn't exist. The problems we have are often problems of progress.
Exactly. That gap between what we have now and what we aspire to in healthcare, it isn't really a sign of failure, it's a sign of our ambition. It's the engine driving us to constantly do better. We're not just aiming for survival anymore, we're aiming for everyone to truly thrive.
And the pace just feels like it's accelerating, doesn't it? You've got CRISPR therapies actually curing genetic diseases now, AI spotting cancers humans might miss, synthetic biologists literally programming cells like tiny computers. And at the very same time, you have social workers connecting desperate families to resources that save lives, nurses providing comfort, holding hands, making sure people aren't alone at the end. And who even knows what's being discovered right now in someone's basement lab, maybe lit by glowing plants that will make today's miracles look quaint tomorrow.
It's an incredible picture. We've built, or are building, a civilization where suffering is less of a certainty and more becoming a choice, where every person, ideally, has the chance to live not just a longer life, but a better life. Healthcare really is civilization building. It's arguably humanity's greatest collective achievement. And it's this ongoing mission, isn't it? To create a world where everyone truly gets the chance to flourish.